I bet you know someone like Julie. Julie is a successful professional in her early 30s. She wakes up every morning before dawn, meticulously plans her day, and never misses a deadline. To the outside world, she is a picture of calm and confidence, a high achiever who seems to have it all together. Yet beneath that polished exterior lies a different story. One that Julie does a pretty good job at hiding from everyone around her, including herself. What no one sees is the constant internal struggle that's going on inside Julie's head. Her thoughts are a never-ending carousel, spinning with self-doubt and fear of failure. She replays every conversation, every decision, every action over and over in her head. She wakes up in the middle of the night, heart racing, mind whirling, going over and over tomorrow's to-do list, and to a constant looming fear that she might not live up to expectations. This story sounds all too familiar to individuals dealing with high-functioning anxiety. This is particularly hard to spot in others and even in yourself because people with high-functioning anxiety don't look like they're paralyzed by fear or unable to function. It's quite the opposite. People often use their anxiety to propel them forward, to achieve more, to be more organized, to be more put together, and it helps them gather up all of these external indicators of success. Today, we're going to explore 7 signs of high-functioning anxiety, including why it's often missed, how therapy could help, and some coping strategies that might be useful. But first, if we haven't met before, hi, my name is Dr. Jamie. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and coach who focuses on balanced, wellness-first personal productivity. High-functioning anxiety is something I see a lot with a variety of clients, and that's because it's often camouflaged by traits that society generally celebrates. And it's also missing a key component that's required for a mental health diagnosis. Individuals with high-functioning anxiety are generally excelling at work, at home, or in social situations. That means that their experiences generally don't rise to the level of impairment required for a clinical diagnosis. Things like generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder all require evidence of serious functional impairment in the area of occupational, social, familial, or some other important life domain. Which brings us to the first sign of high-functioning anxiety. There's that difference between the external success and internal turmoil that you find with individuals dealing with high-functioning anxiety. People with high-functioning anxiety are often excelling at external measures of success. But inwardly, they're struggling with persistent worry, fear, or self-doubt. This anxiety could also present itself with a variety of physical symptoms, things like restlessness, insomnia, muscle tension, fatigue, or stomach issues. And it really tends to look different depending on your phase of life. If you were in school, high-functioning anxiety can look like high levels of academic excellence. You're involved in a variety of extracurricular activities. You could be the president of the debate club. You are in student government. You're running track and field, and you're also spending a bunch of hours volunteering in the neighborhood. Teachers and peers could admire your intelligence and dedication, but inwardly, you might have this feeling like you're never doing enough. You should be in more clubs, and your academic successes aren't really attributed to your effort or your intelligence. It really is just dumb luck. You might spend countless hours studying or preparing, and you're not taking the time out for self-care activities or to have a variety of experiences that you might want to have in school, things like making friends, socializing, or taking appropriate breaks. And those constant feelings that you're not doing enough, taken together with the fact that you don't really know how you're contributing to your successes, so you might be contributing, you might not be contributing, leads to this constant internal questioning. Am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Am I enough? Those questions can contribute to the second sign of high-functioning anxiety, and that's struggles with perfectionism. People struggling with high-functioning anxiety have exceptionally high standards for themselves, and they strive toward achieving them. This level of dedication and productivity makes a person look really driven or focus on a goal. But a person with high-functioning anxiety isn't solely motivated by goal attainment. They're driven by things like a fear of failure or potentially a need for external approval. Take someone who's asked to regularly give presentations at work. Despite this being a fairly regular occurrence and the speaker being regarded as a competent speaker, she spends weeks preparing for every individual presentation. She rehearses multiple times a day, scrutinizes every slide looking for errors, and frequently updates her presentation even up to the very last minute. In this case, her perfectionism is leading to over-preparation, which leads to increased anxiety. She fears that any minor mistake could damage her reputation, and that just increases her anxiety. As her mind starts upping the stakes of every potential misstep, she prepares even more. Her overachievement often leaves her feeling drained and unable to actually celebrate her successes. And the fact that they're asking her to give more presentations is actually evidence of how well she's doing. But she's not really able to enjoy that because she spends all of her time over preparing for her next presentation. That ability to be able to internalize your successes is essential to developing what psychologists call self-efficacy, developing your belief that you're able to effectively do things like give a presentation. And rather than increasing her confidence over time, her experiences are actually leading to burnout and increased levels of anxiety, all for unrealistic expectations and imagined consequences, or in service of pleasing others. Which brings us to sign number 3 of high-functioning anxiety: overcommitment. Many types of people may find themselves overcommitted or saying yes to too many things. In fact, I made a whole video on how this might be a sign of difficulty maintaining boundaries, and I'll link it in the cards up above. But people with high-functioning anxiety often find themselves overcommitted due to their inability to say no to others. It's easy to see how this might happen, especially if you're an overachiever. And it's commonly known as the competency trap or the success trap. This is how it happens. First, you find yourself having an increased workload. Overachievers are seen as people who are competent and reliable, and because of that, you start getting an increased workload as your supervisors start to acknowledge that you're capable and your colleagues come to depend on you. Over time, this addition of more work leads to a feeling of overcommitment. Now, individuals with high-functioning anxiety find it particularly hard to deal with overcommitments because the compliments and validation that you get from doing more and more work soothes or silences the anxiety or internal voices of self-doubt or fear. You become eager to maintain this positive reputation, and the feelings of validation that you get from being seen as hyper competent or hyper capable. So you take on more and more work, and when you do that, there comes a breaking point. You might find that the quality of your work is decreasing, the quantity of work that you're able to put out eventually starts to decline, and that just leads to more and more anxiety about your performance. This could ultimately lead to burnout and psychological symptoms like emotional distress or difficulty regulating your emotions, as well as physiological symptoms of burnout. The person might start to resent their work or their colleagues, and their overall well-being could suffer. Which leads us to sign number 4 of high-functioning anxiety, and that's a high need for reassurance. We've been talking a little bit about those internal feelings of self-doubt and how those things could be soothed by getting external validation or things like compliments. This high need for reassurance stems from those internal feelings of self-doubt, insecurity, or fear of making a mistake. Individuals may frequently seek validation or confirmation on their decisions or actions, and that's to alleviate that internal sense of anxiety or distress that they have about making a wrong decision or taking the wrong action. I tend to see this more frequently in my female clients compared to my male clients, but it can be present in a variety of different situations. Take a stay-at-home spouse. At home, a wife might be overly worried about whether or not she's doing the right things as a wife or a mother, and she might constantly feel like she's not doing enough, so she seeks validation from her husband, often asking him if she's contributing enough to the household, if she's meeting his external beauty standards, if the house is clean enough, if her recipes are tasty enough. She might be stressing out about whether or not she's enough as a mother. A parent of a small child might be asking, am I doing enough for their enrichment and their development? All of this is indicative of that internal sense of distress, like they might not be enough or they might not be doing enough. But because these reassurances are rarely enough to quiet those internal voices, this just starts a cycle where individuals are constantly seeking out that external validation. Now, they may or may not get it from their external environment, which leads us to sign number 5, and that's individuals with high functioning anxiety often struggle with overthinking, or what psychologists call rumination. This refers to the tendency to excessively think about or dwell on negative thoughts, past experiences, or potential future problems, leading to increased stress, anxiety, and difficulty focusing on the present. For people with high functioning anxiety, this can take a variety of forms. For example, you can have a casual conversation with your boss about a podcast that you listen to, and as you start to walk away, you begin to analyze every moment of that conversation. Every answer you gave, every facial expression, even how you started the conversation, starts to be replayed over and over in your brain. You start to worry, did I come across as too nervous? Did I come across as too casual? Is he gonna think I'm too full of myself? For other people, this rumination could be around decision making. They may spend weeks and weeks researching a decision. Then, once the decision is made, they still spend weeks and weeks online reading reviews and second guessing whether or not the right decision was made. Unfortunately, this rumination makes it hard for you to enjoy the benefits of the decision that you made, which again is a big piece in developing self-efficacy and confidence in your own decision making. Now, because of this, some individuals with high functioning anxiety will actually display sign number 6, and that's procrastination. Now, this came up a little bit in the last sign, as individuals with high functioning anxiety can often take quite some time to make a decision. But procrastination itself is also a sign of high functioning anxiety. Individuals with high functioning anxiety often have a particular flavor of procrastination, and it also seems to serve a particular function for these individuals. Sometimes individuals with high functioning anxiety spend so much time researching and analyzing potential decisions that they run out of time and end up making no decision at all. Other times they fill their day with non-essential tasks which are easy to complete or which may provide external validation. That's things like responding to emails super quickly or doing things in public where the boss or your coworkers may see how busy you are, rather than focusing your efforts on harder projects or things that really need to get done, but have the potential for missteps. Although those tasks might be more important, they're also more anxiety-provoking and are more likely to be avoided by individuals with high functioning anxiety. This flavor of procrastination also contributes to sign number 7 of high functioning anxiety. This is an avoidance of things that you are uncertain about or areas where you're not 100% sure you'll excel. Sometimes people with high functioning anxiety simply totally avoid things that might trigger the emotions or behaviors we've been talking about in this video. They may not want to try new things out of fear that they might not be able to perform perfectly. They might also worry that trying something new doesn't fit into their schedule because they likely have taken on a bunch of overcommitments already, and they're worried that taking on one new task might push them over the edge where the quality of their work starts to decline, and it puts their reputation at risk and potentially puts them at risk of not getting that much needed external validation, and they might shy away from adding anything else into their schedule, even if it's something that might provide them with a new opportunity or provide them with an avenue for relaxation or potentially even joy. They might avoid new people or new social interactions out of fear that they'll be second guessing their decisions for weeks or months on end. So the safest thing to do is to stay in your lane, stay where you're comfortable, stay where you've already had a proven track record of success, or where people see you as the default expert or the default go-to person. Because staying in those spaces minimizes the risk of you potentially losing status. And this is potentially the highest cost paid by individuals with high functioning anxiety. The potential for new experiences and new opportunities is part of the richness of life. Sticking with the one or two things that you know you're good at only limits your life. And it makes it so that performance in those one or two areas are so important to you because that's all you have. What psychologists know is that over time, avoidance actually increases anxiety. Approaching and engaging with things where you're not 100% comfortable is central to clinical therapies focusing on decreasing anxiety over time. Although high-functioning anxiety is not a diagnosis recognized by the American Psychological Association or the American Psychiatric Association, individuals dealing with high-functioning anxiety could still benefit from some scientifically supported therapies aimed at decreasing anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, could be a form of therapy particularly useful for individuals with high-functioning anxiety. Specifically, CBT may help individuals with high-functioning anxiety identify and challenge negative thoughts related to anxiety. That can be thoughts like catastrophizing, which is expecting that the worst would happen in any given situation, all or nothing thinking, which is looking at things in terms of black or white, 100% success or 100% failure, or overgeneralization, which is believing that one negative experience is representative of all future experiences. In fact, I made an entire video on how your thinking patterns could be keeping you anxious or depressed, and I'll leave that linked down below. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to this channel. CBT could also help individuals with high-functioning anxiety challenge thoughts or beliefs around overachievement and perfectionism. CBT interventions like behavioral experiments or task exposure could help with those maladaptive beliefs. That would be things like asking a person to deliberately perform below 100% at a particular task and see what happens. Or it could be making a plan for behaviors that you've been specifically avoiding. That could be something like going out to a new social situation, taking on a task that you feel uncomfortable with or feel like you might not be able to perform perfectly on, or something else that you've been specifically procrastinating. I feel like every time I bring this up in therapy, people look at me like I have three heads, but there's something really magical and science-based about the power of exposure therapy, or exposing yourself to things that you feel uncomfortable with. Many of my clients have found it really life-changing. Now, clearly, I'm a little biased because I'm a psychologist, but there are also non-clinical coping strategies that you can work through yourself or with a coach that might help individuals with high-functioning anxiety. Some people really benefit from minor lifestyle changes or being able to create some space in their schedule to address some basic needs. Things like getting enough sleep, getting in regular exercise, reducing caffeine and alcohol intake can all have a positive impact on subjective feelings of anxiety. Practices like meditation, learning some breathing exercises, or mindfulness exercises could also reduce anxiety by increasing relaxation. You could also work to develop your self-awareness. Understanding your own tendencies and how to create and maintain boundaries could be a great first step in overcoming high-functioning anxiety. Finally, finding a good source of social support or working with a professional could also be beneficial for individuals managing high-functioning anxiety. If you're interested in working with me or getting more resources on high-functioning anxiety, check out the link to my website down below.